And he says, so we don't go by there. We don't go there. He said, actually, there's a trail, and he pointed to it. You could see it from his property. And he says, and I take my horses up there, but they stop right before Spirit Lake starts, and they will not go past it. He goes, and I won't go there without my horses. So it's pretty interesting, and that's still a place I'm dying to go and figure out. How am I doing on time? I can sit up here and talk forever. You doing? Okay,
You're good.
I can talk all day. So there's stuff like that in the book as well. Spirit Lake, which I don't, like I said, I don't want to give out too much information about it. But I recommend doing that. I really recommend doing that. Just jump in the car and drive, fill up your tank, drive, just land somewhere and walk into a bar and start asking, or walk into a restaurant and start asking, tell me about your ghost stories around this town. You'd be surprised at what you find out. I'm actually going to be teaching a class this fall at Tulsa University, TU. I'm very excited about that. It's going to be called Exploring Paranormal Tulsa. It's going to be from September through October. It's a 6-week course. You'll have to enroll at TU. I don't do that myself. But we're going to actually have 3 classes in a classroom. We're going to kind of teach you how to do paranormal research, and then 3 out in the field. We're going to take you out to places so that you can actually put those to work. And we'll do field trips and go out to crazy places that I've actually have contact with. But a lot of that, one of the most important things, though, is promoting history. I think it's even mentioned in the little program that you have, how important the history is behind a haunting. Every place that we have investigated, we have done some of the greatest places in Tulsa, like the Cain's Ballroom, Brady Theater, places like that. Every one of them have just this crazy history behind it. For instance, the Cain's. Back in the day, it was actually one of the Tulsa City prosecutors wanted the Cain's Ballroom destroyed. He wanted it torn down. He said it was the biggest menace to the entire city of Tulsa. The Tulsa World actually has reports on it being that some of the strongest, the toughest gang fights occurred right outside the doors of the Cain's Ballroom. It's got some really cool history with it as well, as far as the Sex Pistols. They actually played there. And Sid Vicious, and it was still there up until they did renovations recently, but Sid Vicious went backstage and punched a hole in the wall so that he could see into the women's bathroom. And they had it all encased in a box with a lock on it. It was really cool, very cool piece of history. And they actually still have that to this day. When they did the renovations, they cut out the sheetrock. It's back behind in the offices, but it's pretty cool. But yeah, the ballroom, it was built in 1921. And it originally was a place where you could get ballroom dancing for just a dime. And later it was turned in, they called it the Rowdy Roadhouse. It became a rough and tumble kind of place. And again, it was one of those places, again, that the city prosecutors were like, we can't have this place here in Tulsa. Now, in Tulsa, that is an icon. I know a lot of its residents could not imagine Tulsa without the Cain's Ballroom. So, another place that's really interesting is the Tulsa Garden Center. There's a lot of people drive by, and it's absolutely gorgeous 3-story mansion that sits out on 21st and Peoria in Tulsa. And it has kind of a wild history, but nothing real tragic. So as I talked about that story of how I got started and the tragedy that happened at that property that I worked at, not everything has a tragic story that's haunted. And the Garden Center is one of those places. The Garden Center was built during the Depression, and they tried to sell it for a long time for as little as $25,000.